Steve Redgrave. Please give him a warm Absolutely. And of course, King Ryan.
We are very privileged to have Sir Steve with us today. We're going to go on a journey now, what it really takes to have achieved what Sir Steve has achieved. We're going to look at the ups, we're going to look at the downs, we're going to look at exactly what you can do to go and get the result that you are looking for. And of course, time permitting, we will open it up for some Q&A towards the end. So shall we just get into this, team? Are we ready? Okay, great. So, Sir Steve, take us back to the beginning. What first drew you to rowing as a young man in Marlow? And did you ever imagine it would become your life-changing calling?
Certainly not. Really take you back before that. When rowing is mentioned, that quite often it's about the Oxford Cambridge boat race. It's a very educated sport, and I don't come from that type of background. My grandfather on my mother's side drove buses and trams in Birmingham for 40 years. My grandfather on my dad's side was a carpenter, and actually during the Second World War made wooden propellers for Spitfires. And so very much working class. When my dad came to leaving home, he wanted to get away from his father very quickly, and so joined the Merchant Navy, and he was in the Merchant Navy for 6 years, and then came out of that and started of working for the gas board, and started his own building business as well. So I was brought up, really, I've got two elder sisters. One's 5 years older than me, the other one's 9 years older than me. They had quite a tough upbringing, and mine was a little bit easier. I think of time of life that I was coming to leave school is that my parents' outlook was very different. I was starting to do quite well in the sport at that time, and they wanted to sort of focus me. So sort of gone from almost working class to middle class background. But how the rowing started, I'm heavily dyslexic, struggled big time at school, but used to love sports. As a sort of pre-teenager, I was a reasonable sprinter, did okay at district championships and for the Cubs. Went to secondary school, and because having two older sisters, I'm not quite sure what they did, but the older students at the school, they'd left by the time I got there. The older students took a dislike to me. And so that was the age of we used to wear Doc Martens. Some of the older people in the room would remember that. And the issue with them is that the eyelets is how many eyelets you could have in your boots. Problem with having boots is that they could be held up with my feet still in them against the fence and be tied up. But the form teacher I had in my second year was a guy called Francis Smith. He was the head of the English department. He also became captain of Marlow Rowing Club at the same time. He'd started a small boat club at school. We're a comprehensive school, failed my 11 plus. And his passion for rugby and rowing was second to none. And he used to go around and ask a few individuals if they would like to try the sport of rowing. Struggling at school, academic-wise, is that to row, you've got to go out of school premises. You've got to go down to the river. And so, yeah, I'll do that. I'm definitely up for that. Within 2-3 weeks of doing it, where we used to do just games lessons, we fell in love with it. It was 12 people he asked from our year group. That whittled down to 4 people very quickly. And in 1976, that we started racing. We thought we were the God's gift of rowing. We thought we were absolutely fantastic. What Francis did was just made the whole thing fun. It wasn't about going out and training and having goals to do. even though it was escapism for me of getting out of school. But you felt privileged of being part of this. And when Francis, after 2 months, 3 months of training, said, "Would you like to go and do a race?" Thinking, God, go away at the weekend. That's got to be fun. And then because we were successful, we were in a 4. We won in our first year. We raced 7 times and won all 7. That's where we thought we were the God's gift of rowing. What we didn't realise at the time is all the top schools, the private schools, your Eatons, your Radleys and the Shrewsburys, they all do 8s as their first boat. And those schools will have a second 8 as well. Eton would have a third 8 before they'd even consider putting out a 4. So what we didn't realise at the time, but I realise now, is that we rowed really badly. We trained really hard, but it was fun, not really as formal training. And that because we used to win these races, that we didn't realise that we're not racing the same level of athletes because they were rowing in different categories of boats at the time. We didn't really come across them until 2 years later. We were trying to get to the Junior World Championships, and that's when everyone sort of put into a mix, and you sort of show yourselves as individuals as well as a crew within that, where you're racing the better athletes. But we ingrained ourselves by that time is that we win races. And it was that sort of mindset. So when the races got really tough, is that we didn't give up because we win. Yes, this is close, but that we dug a bit deeper, and I think those early lessons were very much of a part of grounding me for when I became a senior and the success that we got from there on.
Great. Wow. Absolutely incredible. So before your first Olympic gold in Los Angeles, 84, what was the moment? Was there a moment leading up to that where you and the team, you realized that you could literally compete at the very, very top? And there was a moment, a chance that you could get this gold. How did you approach that first Olympic Games?
I became a senior international in 1980. I was still a junior at that time and almost went to the Moscow Games as an 18-year-old. And so that when I sort of joined the team, senior team, sort of 79, 80, is that there were a lot of coaches, and Marlow Rowing Club had 3 coaches that were coaching on the international scene at that time. And we also had a lightweight rower that became 3 times world champion around that time. I looked up to him at the club. But they were saying to me, "You're capable of being a world champion." I'm thinking, God, that sounds quite nice. So coming to the end of leaving school, not going on to university, I sort of focused is okay, that world champion sounds nice, but why not Olympic champion? That's what I'm going to do. We hadn't had Olympic success in rowing since 1948, when London staged the Games. Great Britain won 3 gold medals at those Games, 2 of them within rowing. And so there wasn't a pathway of success. There wasn't a process that you could follow. You were sort of finding your own way to thing. East Germany dominated the sports during that time, and you sort of looked up to them, to the performances that they were doing across the whole board. At the Moscow Games, of the 14 gold medals, they won 12. There was a boycott at that time, so there wasn't any Americans, West Germans or New Zealanders there that are quite good at the sport as well, but it wouldn't have made that much of an impact at it. And so of coming through that sort of process, I didn't get selected in the boat that I was trying to go to the Olympic Games at, but I think that sort of embraced you more for the next 4 years of trying to get it. That 4 years seemed to take a very long time. As the older you got, the years seemed to go pretty quickly. I think that's pretty similar in all walks of life in some ways. But the disappointment of not going to the Moscow Games really sort of dug deep. And so you train through. The British team weren't performing very well. We used to win the occasional medal. but not really win gold medals at World Championships and certainly not at Olympic Games. But with people telling you that you are capable of being a world champion, you're racing the same people at the World Championships who are at Olympics. So we have a World Championships every year, apart from Olympic year, which the Olympics takes over, is that you're thinking, well, why can't I do this? And so that was great in those early days of having of good coaches, good athletes saying that you're capable of doing that. But I believed my name was engraved on the trophy. I just didn't know what year it was. I'd set myself a personal target of going to three games: the Moscow, Los Angeles, where I hoped to be in a final, pushing for a medal, and then the gold medal that I was going to win is Seoul in '88, and that was supposed to be in the single scull. And that was the sort of very loose plan I had. We had very few athletes that went older than early 30s, because there's no prize money, there's no appearance money, we had no sponsors, and so financially it was really difficult to do of that and be at that level. And so to try and go to 3 games, one was taken away from me. The financial and political climate was happening around the Moscow Games, and I felt the team, 83 was a big turning point in my career, probably the biggest one, is I was in the single scull, got selected to go to the World Championships. In those days, you had to make the semi-final, be in the top 12 to get a finishing position. Now you get finishing positions of how many entries there are. And I got eliminated and didn't make the semi-final. So I was out. And then you have to sit around for the rest of the week watching everyone else compete and thinking, why isn't this happening? And what I did coming out of those championships is that I started looking at business, of how they focused and achieved the dreams that they were trying to do. Up until that time, I had beginning of each year, I had a sheet of A4 paper. And I used to write down of everything that I felt that was going to help me become a world champion or Olympic champion. And so you put your equipment of what training camps you'd like to do, what races you'd like to do, of very little income, of coming in, of enough food to be able to. We have something like 6,000 to 7,000 calories per day that we have to eat to be able to do the training that we have to do, just to be able to get the ticket to be able to compete at games. And so funding all that is pretty difficult. And then you've got that list and you're thinking, okay, I can't afford to do all that. So I won't have a new boat this year, and I won't go on this training camp. I'll do this, this, and this. And that's the way that we sort of looked at it. The British team up at that point was very much about of doing the same things that we were doing the year before. But we weren't getting success the year before, and we're following the same routine. And so in '83, after the single sculls, me looking at other sports, of businesses, and thinking, I'm doing this pretty half-hearted, really. I really need to commit myself a little bit more. And rebelled against the team. The chief selector at the time said that if you don't do what we tell you to do, we won't send you to the games. So I said, okay, I won't go to the games. I'll go and compete at the under-23 World Championships instead of going to the Olympic Games. My coach and that woman, they got together and eventually came up with a strategy of getting me back on the team. But I felt the other athletes weren't training to the level that they needed to be able to compete. And so I didn't really want to row with them. They didn't really want to row with me. So that's why I was single sculling. I had some pretty good results in '84 build-up, coming third at one race behind the 5 times world champion and of the 3 times Olympic champion. And I was third to that. And people expected me then to carry on the single scull from there. But that was when the boycott came in. Obviously, I briefly touched on the problems in Moscow, is that the Soviet Union, as they were then, put troops into Afghanistan, and that was looked upon a bad thing. 6 years later, we put troops in that. That seemed to be okay 6 years later, but not for them. And so there ended up being a boycott at those games. And then, of course, there was a tit for tat. So the Soviet Union, East Germany, most of the Eastern Bloc countries didn't go to the LA games. So it was pretty devastating for our sport not having the East Germans there, even though that we beat the East Germans on the last race before going and breaking the world record. That was my first world record. I had a few. They've all gone now. And I remember coming off the water. Now our races for World Cup races tend to be over 3 days, and it's just one event. Back in the 80s and 90s, is that there was an international regatta on the Saturday, and then you had another international regatta on the Sunday. And most of the time, depending on the draw, you'd race the same people in the heats trying to get through to the final. So if you had a bad draw, you might not get through to the final and you're out again. That happened a few times. But that was the sort of the process that we were there. And because I rebelled against what we were doing, and saying, right, we've got to train more, we've got to do a different process of doing it. And that's really what happened. I went from the single scull, went into the four. The second international regatta, I rode in the four and the single at the first one, and concentrated on the next 2 weeks of just rowing in the four. We won that international regatta, beating the West Germans, who were fourth place at the World Championships the year before. So we beat them by quite a long way. So that sort of showed we were in the ballpark. The last international regatta, where we broke the world record, we beat the East Germans by 2 seconds. They were the favourites, and they were the best of the East German whole team that was in that boat. And as we came off the water, people said, that time you've done is just unbelievable. That's never going to be broken. That is incredible time. We're an outdoor sport, so we're very much of whatever the conditions may be. We race over 2,000 meters, which is well over a mile of distance. And our coach decided, because it was the last race before LA, not to race again. We've beaten the East Germans, we've done that, we've got the world record, we've done that. We're not going to race on the Sunday. So Sunday we didn't go out. The rest of everyone, the conditions were faster, everyone went quicker, and our world record that was never going to be broken got beaten in less than 24 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Which is pretty disappointing. But that's how we got together, went to the games. The American four was at Lucerne, but they had to come back and do trials in America. They got beaten by another crew. So the Americans that we raced was a different crew to that we raced before. Americans being very much a mentality of we're going to win everything, made it pretty tough for us. We led off the start, they came through, and then we rode them down in the closing stages. And standing on that podium was just amazing. I thought I wasn't going to be Olympic champion until 4 years later. To stand on that moment, have your national anthem of played was pretty special.
I think that's it. It's amazing the ups and downs and how you had to really fight to get to that place. But it just shows if it doesn't work first time, try something else. Use a different solution. Get around the right people.
It's interesting you saying that, because now people ask me, or not quite so much now, but nearer the time when I retired, wasn't that a risk of doing something different to what the team was doing? Well, no, it wasn't, because what we were doing before was almost getting better at getting worse year on year, because we were following the same process. At least I was trying to do something different, and that different, it could have mean we got worse. But you've got to try something different to be able to make sure that there is a different process. Fortunately, that the processes that we put together got success. And then once you start getting success, then you believe in that process and you put more and more effort within that, and that's where you can sort of move ahead.
Leading up to that first Olympic gold, who was really pivotal in your life? You know, it must have been a strain on relationships. And who was around at that time, the environment that kept you in the game?
I mentioned that Francis Smith, my original coach at school, we stayed very close with each other until a few years ago that he passed away. And then I've got my first international coach, Mike Spracklin, whose birthday is tomorrow. He's 88 tomorrow. Coached in us to winning 2 Olympic gold medals, then as an amateur, because everything was amateur in those days. He went to Canada as a professional, got paid for doing his role then because we wouldn't pay him in this country, and he helped them win Olympic gold medals. He went to America after that and won them Olympic medals and World Championships wins. So he was a pretty outstanding coach. But he was a lightweight rower before there was lightweight competitions. So he had to be a better technician. He had to train harder. Everything was about of trying to be better than somebody else. One of the things that's just sprung in my mind that reminds me of him is that he was fanatical about everything. So he used to drink tea. He stopped drinking tea because it used to stain the cup. And I think, if it's staining the cup, what's that doing to my insides? And so he stopped drinking tea for those reasons. Are very, very intense. People do say where he's coached around the world that he pushes his athletes really hard. They either make it or break down, and there's quite a lot of evidence that is true. But he was sort of my mentor. We both from the same hometown of Marlow. He went into coaching as lightweight rowing started. He was asked to put a lightweight team together, help them to win of medals, coached us to win Great Britain a gold medal first time since 1948, and did that 2 Olympics over. Then went to Canada. He actually came back to the UK and he helped the girls win their first Olympic medal, which was a silver medal in Sydney. And now the women's team are stronger than the men's team within British rowing. And he was the start of that as well. So he was really the guy that I looked at, not just from a coaching point of view. His coaching was really good. His administration was awful. That you never really knew what you were doing training-wise. You'd turn up at the training venue and he would sort of think, okay, we're going to do some 1,000-meter pieces, or we're going to do some endurance work, or we're going to do this. Very different to Jürgen, which was my other coach that coached me to 3 Olympic gold, and I'm sure we'll come on to that a bit there. Very different in the processes of how he did it. So it was very much of suck it and see. And because he wasn't coached to be a coach, and he was self-taught, is that sometimes we could do an amazing performance. I remember going into one World Championships where Andy Holmes and myself were in a pair. We doubled up, did the Cox's pair and Cox pair, which was unheard of at that time. We broke the world record in training 2 weeks before the World Championships, and then struggled at the World Championships. And that was sort of one of the downfalls of Mike, even though he was self-taught and got us to where we needed to be, is that when Jürgen Grobler came in, it was all regimented. It was always a process. Whatever time you did and performance you did at the first World Cup, you had to be better the second time. You had to be better at the third. You had to be better at the World Championships. And that went through the whole season. You'd have 2 or 3 weeks break before getting back into training again, and your level would drop, but then it's building up. So it's this process of building up all the time with Jürgen, and it was very much hit and miss. But a lot of my philosophies, and I have been of coaching, are very much based a lot from Mike, but interacted with Jurgen's stuff as well.
So in your own words, how important is having great mentors in your life to help you get results?
I don't think you can do it without, and certainly be a long-term winner. In whatever form of life, you need a path to be able to follow. And where we were in the 70s or 60s, 70s and 80s is that we didn't have a path of success. You were trying to pick up on the odd Western crew that was doing well, how the East Germans were doing, and try to relate that to your own training. And that was always pretty difficult. And I think that's where Mike and I made a really big step forward, because we started training more volume. His philosophy was always miles makes champions. The more miles you can do, the more chance that you're going to make it. But the East Germans at that time were moving the sport on. And it was all in training. We're a muscular endurance sport, but it's about your capacity of being able to use that strength and power over the 2,000 meters. So there's a substance called lactic acid. And if you do anything really fast and repetitive, you produce a lot of lactic acid. So middle distance runners, more apparent in 400 meters running, is that last 100 meters where the lactate is built up because you've given it all you've got. You can go flat out in rowing about 45 seconds, in 400 meters about 30 seconds before the lactate hits you. Lactate is a substance that helps to protect the body. It slows the muscle movements down, and so you're counteracting that all the time. And so the way that we trained, we were always producing a lot of lactic acid. And what the East Germans did was do very low rate of striking. So how many strokes per minute was down to 18 strokes per minute in endurance training. We would race at 36 strokes per minute. So there's a big difference from that. And train to a heart rate. So you're trying to get your heart rate in the region of 120 to 140 beats per minute by rating 18 strokes per minute. So you've got a lot of recovery time, but you've got to pull really hard. With Mike, that we used to paddle light, wasn't really light, it was just a slop along at 24 strokes per minute. But short strokes, no intensity. But when it came to a set piece, that's when we turn it on. With Jurgen, it was always about every stroke counts. When he came to be chief coach at Leander Club, he put pegs in the river every 250 meters. And it didn't matter if you were paddling light, doing endurance work or timepieces, everything was recorded and logged. And when you come to major championships, is that your mind plays games on yourself. And you look back thinking, oh, this time last year we were doing much faster times. Out would come the logs and saying, actually, the build-ups are very similar of preparation coming into the games. Thinking, actually, you are performing worse, or you are the same, or you're better.
Tracking your data.
It's having that where Mike was just sort of touchy-feeling and as I say, a little bit sort of hit and miss. We hit quite a lot of times, but Jurgen was just consistent all the time.
Awesome, great, good. You had some fantastic partnerships in rowing, Matthew Pinsett and other members of the team. How important are relationships to you? And knowing what you know about those relationships, how can people apply similar principles into their businesses and building their businesses right now?
Teamwork is vitally important. Obviously, with rowing, whatever boat of category you are, apart from the single, you've got pairs, doubles, fours, and eights. That you are, it's probably one of the ultimate team sports. One of the sayings that we have in the sport is you're only as fast as the weakest person within the crew. And there's a very strong element of that. You could put the 4 best athletes in the world, put them into a 4, that doesn't guarantee you success. It's about how that blends together. when Matthew and I won 2 gold medals in the pair, then we moved into the 4, and we had James Cracknell and Tim Foster of join us, even though that Matt and Tim were juniors together and won a junior gold medal together. They knew each other. Once they got into the senior team, their paths went in very different directions. Matthew was winning gold medals on a year-to-year basis, and Tim would win the odd medal, but of never be at the top of the podium. Is that we decided that we had to have a different philosophy to the new team members coming in. It wasn't them joining us with Jurgen as our coach, because that wouldn't have worked. Even though we ended up doing all the training and preparations with it, in theory, we changed it around so everyone felt part of the unit, even down to being interviewed by the media after races. Is that I would make sure that Tim and James were in the middle. Most of the questions would come to me. It was down to me to offset them onto them, because it's us as a unit. It's not me as an individual or Matt as an individual. By the time we got to Sydney, Matthew was the better performing athlete. I was probably the weakest within the 4. But it's us together. The blades go in the water at the same time. They release at the same time. Your movements, body movements, have always got to be the same. So that's where I say it's the sort of the ultimate of team sport, where you've got rugby, football, cricket, those type of sports, is that an individual can make the difference to success. But again, there is very much a team element within that, but everyone's got a separate role. Our roles are all the same, to do the same thing all the time. So it's the mechanics of the team from that point of view, but it's the wider team from that. So Jurgen as the coach of setting the training schedules, even though that I would have a say in what we were doing and trying to achieve. One of the things, even though that Jurgen come from former East Germany, is that and being German, you'd expect him to be very regimented. He had a lot of flexibility, because whatever gold medals were won in Paris last year, we know in LA in 3 years' time, 2 years' time from now, is that we've got to be faster, we've got to be better. Nobody's written the book of how we were successful in LA in 28. All the books have been written of how they were successful in Paris last year, but we know that we've got to perform at a higher, better level. So it's the team behind the team, and that's where the World Championships, my wife is still part of the British team. She was an athlete in her own right. She was 5th at the 84 Olympics, silver and bronze medalist, became the team doctor as an amateur, unpaid in 1990. And the team went off Friday to the World Championships that are in Shanghai, start a week today for a week. And we've almost got a production line. There is this winning mentality within the sport now, is that the athletes believe that they're going to win gold medals. Some of them might not, but they'll win silver or bronze. We'll have more finalists. There'll probably only be 1 or 2 boats that won't be in a final, the top 6. But everyone's got a mentality of winning. Going back to the 70s, 80s, and almost the 90s, is that, we're going to the Olympic Games, but we'll get some really nice kit. It wasn't about the winning, because they didn't think they could do it. Now the team feels, and actually what's the strong bit about the team is the team behind the team, is that our support staff right the way through is better than anybody else's. And that's where lotteries made the biggest difference of being able to do that. So us having the strongest support team allows us to have a strong rowing team. Yes, you need good individuals within that as well.
It's great. You've got all the obviously the people, the team. You've got to show up, do the hard work. A lot of what I'm hearing here is also mindset.